The Texas primary is 22 days away, and on November the 8th, Texans will head to the polls to vote in the governor's race. Governor Greg Abbott is currently on a Celebration of Texas tour. He stopped in Lubbock over the weekend, touting his work on the power grid and calling out his Democratic challenger, Beto O'Rourke.
Contrary to the fear-mongering by my opponent out there who wanted to make it sound like Texas was going to crash again, he had no idea exactly everything that we did with the state legislature to make sure the power grid was and is stronger than ever before. The power grid is better, more stable, and more reliable than it has ever been in the history of Texas.
Now, O'Rourke is on a tour of his own. His Keeping the Lights On tour stopped in Denton yesterday. He is calling out what he says are Governor Abbott's failures to protect Texans during last year's winter storm in which more than 200 people died. And Mr. O'Rourke joining us this morning on Daybreak. And good morning. Thanks for being here. We want to first mention that we did invite Governor Abbott on this morning, but he declined our request. And with that being said, let's go ahead and address the grid. It held up in the biggest test we've seen so far since last year's storm. It would appear that the changes worked. So what would you have done differently?
Kara, thankfully, the weather was mild last week, and we really dodged a bullet because the grid is not ready. We haven't weatherized the gas supply, which was the primary factor in the outages that we saw last February, during which 22 people in Dallas County died and many others were injured and harmed. And we saw more than $1 billion in property insurance claims from all the damage that the burst pipes had caused. So we need to weatherize the gas supply going forward. We need to connect with the nation's grid so we can draw down power when we need it and sell it back up when we have additional capacity. We need to lower rates for residents of these communities because thanks to Greg Abbott, Texans will be paying $20 to $50 more on each utility bill every single month for the next 20 years to clean up the mess that he and his friends in the energy industry caused. Some people made billions of dollars on the damage and suffering of the people of Texas. We need to get that money back and return it to the ratepayers. And then we need to make sure that this never, ever happens again. That will be my focus as governor.
Now, Governor Abbott touts Texas's ability to attract businesses and the economy as one of the reasons Texans should reelect him. We've seen a lot of companies that have gone ahead and relocated to Texas. How would you help grow the economy?
First, I'd make sure that we could keep the lights on and that the grid was reliable. Second, I'd make sure that we get away from these extremist far-right fringe politics, like banning all abortions in the state of Texas or putting a $10,000 bounty on the head of anybody who tries to help any woman make her own reproductive health care choices. Not only is that dangerous and deadly for the women of Texas, in a state that is at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis, it makes it really hard to attract employers and talent to this state. I'm going to make sure that we invest in things that we all agree on, like public education and getting behind our public school educators so that they make enough to focus on the job in front of them, which is connecting with those kids and ensuring that they have a passion for lifelong learning, that we improve graduation levels, post-secondary attainment, and that they're able to be competitive for the jobs that we are creating here in Texas. Great public schools, that's something that can bring Republicans and Democrats and independents together, and it makes us more competitive for the kinds of jobs that we want in Texas.
Well, and whether you're Republican, Democrat, independent, rising property taxes are hurting the middle class, and they can prevent first-time home buyers from purchasing, depending on where you want to live. If you become governor, how would you control these escalating property taxes we're seeing across the state?
Since Greg Abbott has been governor, he's left about $100 billion on the table of federal Medicaid assistance that could have come to Texas at a time that the federal government was willing to pay 95 cents on the dollar for Medicaid expansion. As governor, I will say yes to Medicaid expansion, bring $10 billion a year into Texas. Not only will that connect more people with care, attract more doctors to our communities, but it will lower our property taxes as we see less uncompensated care paid for by those who are paying into the hospital district. Second thing I'm going to do is make sure that the state picks up a bigger share of public education, so we reduce the burden on those who pay into the local independent school districts. Those are two ways we can reduce property taxes across the state of Texas.
Well, Mr. O'Rourke, thanks for being with us this morning. I know we're limited time here on Daybreak, but we appreciate it, and safe travels on your tour.
Thank you, Kara. Appreciate it.
All right, let's go over to